What if I told you that on a small hill, hidden in the heart of a simple village, mysterious voices were heard and forever transformed the lives of an entire people? What would you think if you knew these voices carried messages so profound that, to this day, they remain one of the greatest mysteries of modern spirituality? Perhaps you've never stopped to reflect on this, but what you're about to discover could change the way you view faith, the signs of the times, and even the course of humanity. Imagine a peaceful afternoon, the sun setting behind the mountains, and suddenly, 6 young people claimed to hear the voice of Mary bringing words of warning, hope, and revelation. It was Medjugorje, a small village in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which until then was just another forgotten dot on the map. But since that moment, this hill has become a stage for supernatural encounters and testimonies that echo to this day, attracting thousands of pilgrims from around the world. Have you ever felt that sensation that something greater is happening, but that only a few can perceive? Well, that is precisely what surrounds the mystery of the Medjugorje messages. These apparitions were not just isolated reports. They became a call to conversion, prayer, and fasting, and transformed the spirituality of an entire community. But there is one detail that makes everything even more intriguing. Among the many messages already released, there are 7 unrevealed messages, 7 hidden secrets which remain silent, but which carry such great weight that the visionaries themselves claim that when they come to light, they will shake the faith and history of humanity. What is hidden in these words? And why have they remained secret to this day? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover may surprise you. The most impressive thing is to realize how this mystery has crossed borders. People from all places, cultures, and religions have come to this hill, seeking a sign, an answer, or simply the solace of being faced with something beyond human logic. Some say they've experienced miracles, seen signs in the sky, and had their lives completely transformed. What about you? Have you ever experienced a moment when you felt a presence so powerful you couldn't explain it in words? This is what thousands report when they speak of Medjugorje. Not just a place, but a living experience, where the mother's voice blends with the silence of the stones and the cry of the human heart. The visionaries tell us that Mary came not only to comfort, but also to warn. That her voice, soft and maternal, also carried a weight of urgency, as if begging her children to wake up before it's too late. And this contrast between tenderness and warning is what makes these messages so powerful. After all, why keep secrets if humanity so desperately needs answers? What sense is there in guarding mysteries when the world cries out for guidance? These questions echo not only in Medjugorje, but within all those who seek to understand the purpose of such revelations. And as each pilgrim climbs the hill with weary steps, but their hearts burning with hope, the story lives on, renewed with each testimony. Perhaps this is why, even decades later, the mystery of the voices on the hill continues to draw gazes, questions, and prayers. Because it is not just a distant event, but a call that spans generations. And this is precisely where our journey begins. Because more than telling a story, what we will explore together is the real impact of these voices, the power of the messages we already know, and above all, the suspense of those that still remain silent. What do these 7 messages hide? How long will they remain hidden? And how could their revelation transform not just a village, but the fate of us all? Now that you have felt the power of this mystery, let us move on to understand how this testimony spread and began to transform the hearts of an entire people. And when we delve into this mystery, we can't help but wonder, what does this awaken within you? Everyone who hears about Medjugorje feels differently. Some recall moments of faith that marked their lives. Others feel an almost uncontrollable curiosity, and still others feel an inner calling, as if those voices were also directed at them. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what has touched you most so far. It could be a memory, a feeling, or even a question. This exchange is what keeps this conversation alive, because the testimony isn't just mine, it's also yours and everyone else who walks this search together. And do you know why it's so important for you to participate? Because when you comment, like this video, and subscribe to the channel, you're not just supporting the content, You're helping this message reach others who might need to hear exactly that today. Your participation here is what makes this space grow and reach more hearts that don't yet know the transformative power of these stories. It's as if your every gesture is a lit flame that illuminates further, spreading hope where there's still silence. So, if you want to continue following this type of content and not miss any details of the next chapters of this journey, subscribe to the channel right now, because what we'll explore from now on will deepen this mystery even further and may provide answers you never imagined. When we speak of Medjugorje, we are not merely mentioning a name lost among the maps of Europe. We are speaking of a small village that, until before the events that made it famous, lived in the simple rhythm of the land, of daily work and silent faith. Modest houses, dirt streets, families gathered around humble tables sharing bread and stories. It was a place where time seemed to move more slowly, almost as if awaiting something that would come to transform it forever. The setting was ordinary, but it was precisely in this ordinariness that the extraordinary manifested itself. The hill from which the testimonies emerged was unremarkable to human eyes. Rocky, barren in places, dotted with shrubs and small trees that resisted the wind, it was just part of the everyday landscape for the locals. Children ran there, shepherds guided their flocks, and no one imagined that those stones would one day be trodden by thousands of pilgrims from all over the world. What was once mere terrain, hard ground beneath their feet, would become the stage for one of the greatest spiritual manifestations of our time. This transformation of a simple setting into sacred territory reveals something profound. It is not the place that creates the event, but the event that gives new meaning to the place. The silence of the hill, interrupted only by the bird song, and the rustling of the wind through the trees, suddenly began to carry a different melody. It was as if every stone held within it the memory of the voices that had echoed there. The residents, accustomed to seeing that landscape through the eyes of routine, began to see it through the eyes of mystery. And this different perspective changed not only the physical environment, but the mindset of an entire people. The hidden truth of that land was revealed the moment the first testimonies were given. Over time, this small hill began to attract different footsteps. No longer just locals, but pilgrims who came in search of meaning, answers, and solace. People who carried with them invisible burdens, heartaches, unresolved decisions, wounds of the soul. As they climbed that hill, many felt that something within them was also being transformed. They were no longer just stones underfoot, but an inner journey being undertaken. It's curious to see how the exterior and the interior connect in these moments. Each physical ascent was accompanied by a spiritual ascent. The village's streets, once quiet and discreet, began to fill with voices from various languages. Italians, Poles, Brazilians, Americans, all mingling in the same space, united by a common mystery. And this didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual, almost organic process, as if people were being called one by one, until the small community became a global meeting place. The impact of this change cannot be measured solely by the increase in visitors, but by the transformative power that accompanied each person who returned home, carrying with them something that could not be explained, only experienced. The interesting thing is to observe the behind the scenes of this story. For the residents of Medjugorje, accustomed to a simple routine, suddenly seeing buses arriving, hotels springing up, and crowds gathering, was a mixture of surprise and responsibility. They didn't ask to be the center of attention, but were chosen by the unfolding events. And somehow this choice also transformed them. The village was no longer just theirs, it belonged to the world. The faith that had previously manifested itself in domestic silence now became a public testimony, shared with thousands of curious eyes and hearts thirsting for hope. The hill became known as Apparition Hill, and this simple name change already carried within it a new identity. It was as if the place had been rechristened by the experience. And not just the location, but every stone, every trail, every tree along the path seemed to have gained a new voice. Many report that upon climbing, they feel an inexplicable peace, a silence that speaks louder than any words. Others say the environment evokes tears for no apparent reason, as if something hidden finally finds space to manifest itself. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, Because the beauty of Medjugorje lies not only in what meets the eye, but in what the heart feels when encountering that space. It's not just about a physical setting, but about how that setting became a living testimony to a presence that transformed lives. It's about realizing that, behind simple appearances, there lies a hidden truth that only reveals itself to those who have the courage to look beyond. And perhaps this is one of the greatest lessons the hill offers us, learning to see the extraordinary within the ordinary. By describing this environment, we are also opening up space to understand how the first testimonies emerged and how they spread throughout the community. Because it's not just about the place, but about the voices that manifested themselves there and have echoed to this day. And before we continue on this journey, I want to invite you to leave a simple yet powerful phrase in the comments. Right, I'm on this journey too. This small share is like a sign that you too are climbing this hill with me, step by step, toward the revelations that still await understanding. It was in this seemingly ordinary setting that something extraordinary happened. Between days of fieldwork and the quiet routines of the village, 6 young people claimed to have seen the Virgin Mary and heard her speak words that would change not only their own lives, but the hearts of an entire people. Imagine the impact this news had on the small community. In a place where everyone knew each other by name, where every family carried a simple gaze, suddenly a story emerged that transcended logic and confronted everyone with a hidden truth, impossible to ignore. It was as if a veil had been lifted from the eyes of the world, revealing that the supernatural could manifest itself amidst what seemed ordinary. At first, the testimony of these young people generated astonishment, even suspicion. After all, how could one believe that on a simple hill, frequented by children and shepherds, Mary's voice could be heard? But one only had to look into the eyes of these visionaries to realize there was something different there. They weren't making up some random story. There were no contradictions in their words, just a calm and firm conviction that touched even the most skeptical. The expressions on their faces weren't of fear or confusion, but of certainty. A certainty that defied rational explanation, but that transmitted peace and hope to those who listened. Word spread quickly among the residents. Soon neighbors began climbing the hill, not just to see, but to experience what was happening. Some were driven by curiosity, some by fear, and some by a nearly forgotten faith that seemed to reawaken upon hearing those words. With each new encounter the young people had with the mysterious figure, more people gathered, forming small crowds around the hill. And there, amidst the simplicity, the extraordinary became visible. The most striking effect these apparitions had on the people was their impact. Some wept without knowing why, others knelt spontaneously, and there were those who felt compelled to change something in their lives, as if these voices were speaking directly to their hearts. The transformation was not only spiritual but also emotional and even physical. People carrying heavy burdens reported returning home lighter, as if they had left their burdens at the foot of the hill. The impact was not limited to those who witnessed it, but spread by word of mouth, bringing hope even to those who had not yet had the courage to climb up there. The behind-the-scenes details of those early days also reveal the tension that hung in the air. The community, though driven by faith, also lived in a climate of uncertainty. Some local leaders questioned whether this was real or just a collective imagination. Others feared that religious and civil authorities would not welcome the spread of these testimonies. But despite their doubts, there was a greater force sustaining the young people. They did not back down in the face of pressure. Their words remained firm, and this aroused even more curiosity and respect. And it wasn't just the words that drew attention. Many report a glow on the visionaries' faces, a kind of serenity that couldn't be explained solely by the emotion of the moment. It was as if, upon hearing the Virgin's voice, they carried within them a supernatural peace that became visible to everyone around. This atmosphere of reverent silence and profound emotion began to infect the people, who gradually ceased to be mere spectators and began to feel part of something much greater. These initial testimonies marked a turning point. The village, which had previously relied solely on the routine of farm work, now became the setting for an intense spiritual journey. And not only those who witnessed it believed. Many who heard the stories of others began to experience inner changes, as if the simple act of knowing that something sacred was happening in their land was enough to awaken a new mindset. Faith, which had often seemed dormant in the face of daily hardships, began to be reborn with renewed strength. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it's not just about isolated apparitions and testimonies, but about how these events began to shape decisions, transform consciences, and generate revelations that would change the course of that community. With each account, the mystery grew, and along with it, the sense that the world was facing something beyond human comprehension. It was as if the voices on the hill were not just speaking to the young people, but issuing a call to all humanity. And looking back at this beginning, so full of shock and impact, it's impossible not to think of the power a single experience can have on a multitude. When a hidden truth manifests itself, it not only informs, but transforms. It not only draws attention, but provokes an inner movement. This was the effect of the first testimonies, to light a flame that would soon become uncontrollable. And before moving forward on this journey, comment, "This makes sense to me." I want to see if you too sense that this calling is not just a distant story, but something that still echoes within us today. The echo of those first testimonies soon spread throughout the village. It was like a silent flame that suddenly caught the wind and began to spread, illuminating every home, every family, every gaze that had previously seemed dimmed by routine. The voices heard on the hill were not restricted to the small circle of visionaries. They became the subject of conversations, around tables and whispered prayers at night, in casual encounters between neighbors. Soon, Medjugorje was no longer the same. What was once just a rural village was transformed into a place where faith seemed to take on new colors, and where the extraordinary ceased to be merely a distant possibility and became part of everyday life. People began to gather in ever-increasing numbers, drawn not only by curiosity but by a deep desire to be part of what was happening. These weren't just stories told by young people. It was an experience you could feel in the air. The reverent silence of the crowds climbing the hill contrasted with the buzz of conversations around the campfires at night, as residents recounted the details of what they had seen or heard. Gradually, the community began to live around this new reality. Harvests, commerce, and daily commitments were no longer the center of attention. Everything revolved around the voices and the mystery they carried. And this movement wasn't limited to the village. The news quickly crossed borders, reaching neighboring towns and then entire countries. Pilgrims from faraway places began arriving, first in small groups, then in crowds that surprised even the residents themselves. Ordinary people, religious figures, authorities, and even curious skeptics mingled on the hillside trails, each bringing with them their own questions, pains, and anxieties. It was impressive to see how different cultures, languages, and traditions converged there, all united by a common desire to understand what was happening in Medjugorje. This gathering of multitudes had a profound impact. The local community, accustomed to living discreetly, had to deal with the sudden transformation. Hosting pilgrims, organizing masses, welcoming those who arrived seeking answers, all of this required a change in mindset. The village's routine was replaced by a new dynamic, and what might have seemed a burden revealed itself as an opportunity for growth. Many residents who had previously viewed the phenomenon with suspicion were touched by the faith of those from outside. It was as if the voices spoke not only to the visionaries, but to all who were willing to listen. The stories multiplied. People reported inexplicable healings, sudden conversions, transformative decisions that changed the course of entire lives. Each new testimony added to the previous, creating an invisible current of hope and renewal. It was impossible to remain indifferent. Even those who resisted belief felt deep down that something greater was at work, something that could not be easily explained. The impact of these experiences reached far beyond the present moment. Many who visited the hill returned home changed, with a new outlook on life, with an inner flame that would not be easily extinguished. This collective movement gave rise to a spiritual force that united the community in an unprecedented way. Previously, Each family lived their faith individually, restricted to traditional practices. Now, there was a sense of belonging to something greater, a shared journey that made everyone feel connected. This unity was not just the result of words heard, but of a visible transformation in hearts. The voices echoed not only in the ears, but also in the depths of people's souls, like a call to return to the essential, to reconsider their choices, their priorities, and even the direction of their lives. The most fascinating thing was understanding how this phenomenon transcended visible barriers. It didn't matter the language spoken, the social status, or the weight of the individual stories each person carried. Everyone stood on equal footing before the mystery. This equality created a community larger than the village itself. A community, a faith that grew day by day, driven by the same desire to understand and experience something that transcended human explanations. It was as if the hill had become the meeting point between heaven and earth, where each person could feel part of a greater revelation. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when we look at how these testimonies spread and transform the spiritual lives of so many, we begin to realize that we are not just talking about isolated incidents, but about a true inner revolution. It is at this point that we understand that these voices not only united a community, but also initiated a journey of global impact, where personal decisions, mindsets, and even the course of entire families were redefined by what began on a small hill. And to show that you're also walking this journey together, write in the comments, "I'm on this journey too." I want to see who is following with an open heart every step of this transformation that still has much to reveal to us. And it was precisely when the community was already immersed in this atmosphere of transformation that the most mysterious moment in the entire story emerged: the 7 unrevealed messages. Until then, the words coming from the hill had reached the people openly, bringing advice, warnings, calls to prayer and fasting. But amid this stream of revelations, something new was announced. There were messages that could not be shared at that moment. 7 secrets kept, shrouded in silence, as if carrying a weight capable of altering not only the life of the village, but the course of all humanity. The mere mention of these messages stirred mixed feelings. For some, fear. For others, hope. And for many, an uncontrollable curiosity. Why keep something that seemed so urgent a secret? What content could be so powerful as to demand silence? This mystery became fuel for discussion and speculation, but also for profound reflections on spiritual preparation. It was as if the waiting itself were already part of the learning process, as if the secret had the power to transform even before it was revealed. Over the years, seers made it clear that these messages were neither fabrications nor figments of imagination. They contained a hidden truth, so serious it needed to be preserved until the right time. They asserted that each secret would be revealed at the exact moment, according to a plan that surpassed human understanding. This idea stirred people's minds, forcing them to face a reality. Not everything is under our control. Often we must learn to live with expectation, with the tension between what has already been revealed and what is still hidden. This mystery began to attract attention from around the world. Journalists, religious figures, scholars, and the curious traveled to Medjugorje trying to capture some detail, some clue that might indicate the content of the messages. But despite all the pressure, the silence remained. This silence was not empty. It was full of meaning. It was a provocative silence, one that raised uncomfortable questions, one that forced decisions. The impact of the hidden messages lay precisely in what was left unsaid. And we cannot ignore the psychological effect of this collective secret. The fact that something so great existed, yet still inaccessible, changed the way people viewed their own spiritual journey. Many began to live as if each day were a preparation, adjusting attitudes, reviewing choices, transforming behaviors. This movement of silent conversion was perhaps one of the most important fruits of the mystery. Because even without knowing the content of the 7 messages, thousands of people decided to change their lives simply by realizing that something profound was coming. It's interesting to observe how waiting, when filled with meaning, can be transformative. The Medjugorje community became an example of this. Instead of being paralyzed by anxiety, many grew stronger in faith, united in prayer, created bonds of solidarity, and shared experiences. It was as if the secret had planted a seed that slowly germinated in every heart willing to listen. This dynamic teaches us something valuable. Sometimes what we don't yet know can have more impact than what we already know. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because if these messages still remain hidden, it's a sign that they carry not just information, but revelations capable of shaking minds and redefining destinies. And perhaps the true enigma lies not only in the content of the words, but in what they provoke in us as we wait. The secret in this case isn't just about the future, it's also about the present, about how we choose to live in the face of uncertainty, about the decisions we make when we know something greater lies ahead. And, as we walk this journey together, I want to leave you with a simple yet deeply meaningful challenge. Comment. This resonates with me. I want to see if this idea that silence can also transform resonates within you, just as it has in so many lives touched by this mystery. The great question that looms over all who approach Medjugorje is, why do these 7 messages remain hidden? If the purpose of the apparitions has always been to call humanity to conversion, why hide something that could transform so many lives? This is the point that fuels the most suspense and, at the same time, provokes the most reflection. The silence surrounding these revelations is not a silence of absence, but a silence charged with purpose. It is as if there were a precise time for each word to be spoken, a time that has not yet arrived, but already approaches like a shadow on the horizon. The seers themselves affirm that the unrevealed messages are part of a greater plan, one that does not depend on human will, but on a spiritual order that transcends all logic. This idea profoundly resonates with our modern mindset, accustomed to wanting immediate answers and demanding explanations for everything. But the mystery of hidden messages confronts us with an uncomfortable truth. We are not always prepared to hear what we desire. Sometimes we need to mature, undergo processes of inner transformation, and face personal decisions before receiving certain revelations. And it's not difficult to understand this if we think about our own journeys. How many times have you experienced moments when life didn't reveal everything at once? Situations where the answers came just at the right time, when you were ready to deal with them. This is the same principle underlying the 7 messages. The silence surrounding them is not punishment but preparation. It's an invitation to vigilance, patience, and trust. It's as if each of us is challenged to actively wait, cultivating faith and strengthening our souls for the day when the secret finally comes to light. Behind this mystery also lies a powerful lesson about responsibility. Imagine if these messages were revealed hastily, before people were spiritually prepared to understand them. The impact could be devastating. Instead of generating conversion, it could bring fear, despair, or even disbelief. The time of silence, therefore, protects the message, but it also protects the human heart. It's as if heaven has established a precise timetable, and breaking that timetable would mean losing the profound meaning of what is being guarded. Behind the scenes of this story lies an even more delicate spiritual issue, the battle between light and darkness. Hidden messages concern not only the future of humanity, but also the inner struggle each person faces daily. This secret, kept silent, exposes a hidden truth. While we await great revelations, the greatest battlefield remains within ourselves. Waiting forces us to look inward, reassess our priorities, make more conscious choices, and cultivate the necessary vigilance to avoid being caught unawares. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when we look at this mystery, we understand that the secret lies not only in the words not yet revealed, but in the process they generate while they remain hidden. What makes the difference is not only what will come, but what is happening now, in the silence, in the time of preparation. It is in this space of expectation that decisions are forged, consciences are honed, and the mindset of those who dare to stand firm is transformed. And perhaps the true impact of these messages lies precisely in what they already provoke in us before they are even known. Comment. That makes sense to me. I want to feel if this understanding that even silence carries revelations also resonates in your heart, just as it has in the hearts of so many who wait for the right time to hear what is still hidden. And while the messages remained hidden in silence, something even more impressive began to happen. Visible signs, reports of miracles, and events that no one could explain with human logic. It was as if heaven, knowing that waiting for revelations could generate doubt or unease, had decided to leave concrete marks to confirm that something real was happening in Medjugorje. With each new report, the hill became not just a meeting place, but a territory where faith took on tangible contours, almost as if the invisible had decided to allow itself to be touched. Many pilgrims report that upon ascending the hill, they experienced physical healings that medicine could not explain. People who had lost hope, bearing harsh diagnoses and incurable pain, returned home changed, testifying that something inexplicable had happened there. Doctors examining these cases were surprised by the results, finding no scientific reason to justify such a transformation. For some, this was cause for skepticism, but for others, it was confirmation that the voices echoing in Medjugorje carried within them a power that transcended natural laws. But it wasn't just the physical healings that marked history. What's most impressive are the inner conversions. Men and women carrying old hurts, couples in crisis, young people lost on paths of self-destruction, all reported finding a new meaning in life after an experience in Medjugorje. The hidden truth of the hill lay not only in the messages still preserved, but in the visible impact of the transformation each pilgrim carried back with them. It was as if the hill had become a mirror, reflecting not only the heavens but also the very souls of those who sought solace there. And then, there are the phenomena that astounded the crowds. Many claim to have seen the sun dance across the sky, change color and pulse as if it had a life of its own. Others report witnessing mysterious lights, resplendent crosses, or even the scent of roses filling the air, even when there were no flowers nearby. For the faithful, these signs were confirmations of the divine. For the skeptics, unanswered challenges. But regardless of one's position, the fact is that these manifestations created an atmosphere that could not be ignored. It was impossible to leave Medjugorje without carrying with it the feeling that something extraordinary was happening. The background to these accounts shows that these were not isolated phenomena. They were accompanied by consistent testimonies from simple people, uninterested in fame or recognition, but who felt the need to share what they had experienced. These accounts, multiplied over time, created a chain of trust that further strengthened the community's faith. The hill, previously silent, now spoke through signs that everyone could see or feel. And the most curious thing is that each person interpreted these signs differently, but everyone left convinced that they had participated in something that surpassed any earthly explanation. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because when we look at these signs and miracles, we realize that they are not just external manifestations, but internal invitations to transformation. They don't happen to impress, but to provoke a decision, to awaken the awareness that life is much more than what we see. They are subtle revelations that force us to question, what am I doing with the time I have? What do I need to change within myself to be prepared for what is yet to come? These questions are the true impact of signs, because it's not enough to witness something extraordinary if it doesn't lead us to live differently. And at this point in the journey, I want you to leave a simple but meaningful phrase in the comments. Write, I'm on this journey too. I want to see who, besides listening to these stories, also feels within themselves this calling to look beyond the visible and allow themselves to be transformed by the mystery that continues to live in every detail of Medjugorje. The most impressive thing about this whole story isn't just the extraordinary signs or the miracles that defy logic, but the silent and profound impact it all had on people's lives. True transformation took place within hearts that until then had been far from faith, immersed in empty routines, or even dominated by addictions and old pains. Suddenly, those who climbed the hill merely out of curiosity came down feeling different, as if they had left behind a weight that had lingered for years. The testimony was not only from the visionaries, but from each pilgrim who allowed themselves to live that experience. There were reports of men who, once drowning in alcohol, found the strength to quit after a visit to Medjugorje. Women, carrying deep resentments, felt peace again, finding relief from hurts that seemed incurable. Families in crisis on the verge of falling apart rediscovered the importance of unity when touched by the atmosphere of prayer and the example of transformation experienced by so many around them. It wasn't something imposed from outside, but a movement born from within, awakened by a presence that seemed to speak directly to their conscience. This impact also extended to young people. Many, lost amid doubts and difficult decisions, reported finding clarity to follow new paths, often embracing a simpler, more meaningful life. Others decided to dedicate themselves entirely to spirituality, embracing religious vocations, while some simply rediscovered the beauty of prayer, of connecting with something greater than themselves. What seemed like a distant phenomenon became a concrete source of new choices, demonstrating that faith is not an abstract concept, but a force capable of changing mindsets and redirecting trajectories. And we cannot forget those who carried invisible wounds, emotional scars that were invisible to the eye but suffocated them from within. Many reported that upon hearing the testimonies or witnessing the signs, they felt their pain finally find space to dissolve. It was as if each tear shed on that hill had the power to cleanse the heart, opening space for a hope that previously seemed impossible. These stories are perhaps the greatest miracles of Medjugorje. People who were reborn within, who freed themselves from invisible chains, and who decided to rebuild their lives from a new foundation. Interestingly, this impact wasn't limited to those who were physically present. Many, simply by hearing the stories or reading the testimonies, felt similarly moved, as if the power of the message wasn't limited to geographic space, but rather capable of crossing borders and reaching anyone, willing to listen with an open heart. This shows that faith, when genuine, has a reach that transcends distances, breaks down cultural barriers, and can awaken something universal in all of us. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because when we talk about the impact on faith, it's not just about individual stories, but about a collective shift, a new way of looking at life that began to spread. Medjugorje not only transformed pilgrims, but generated a wave of renewal that spread to cities, families, and even entire countries. It was as if a hidden truth had come to light, reminding humanity that it is possible to begin again, that there is hope even when all seems lost. This is the invisible force that connects all stories, the certainty that no life is doomed to emptiness once it finds greater meaning. And in light of this, I want you to leave a simple, yet meaningful word in the comments. Write transformation, because that's precisely what became the heart of Medjugorje. The power to transform lives, to rebuild what was broken, and to rekindle the flame of faith in those who no longer believed. When we consider the impact of Medjugorje, we cannot help but notice how the messages and events experienced there seem to resonate with much older prophecies, already recorded in scripture and in other Marian apparitions throughout history. This is no mere coincidence, but an invisible thread connecting different times, peoples, and generations around the same call. The echo of the voices on the hill resonates as if it were a continuation of the warnings and promises humanity has received at various points in its spiritual journey. In the Bible, for example, we find passages that speak of signs in the sky, of times of trial, and of the need to watch and remain steadfast. The phenomena reported in Medjugorje, such as the sun that seemed to dance or the light that filled the hill, connect with prophetic descriptions that the sky would show signs and wonders to alert hearts. These signs do not appear to frighten, but to remind us that there is an opportune time for every revelation, and that human beings should not become complacent in the illusion that the material world is all that exists. At the same time, we cannot ignore the connection between Medjugorje and previous apparitions of Mary, such as in Fatima and Lourdes. In Fatima, the Virgin entrusted the shepherd children with secrets that, as in Medjugorje, would only be revealed in due time. In Lourdes, she brought messages of conversion and healing that forever changed the lives of those who believed. This pattern of revelations, always accompanied by signs, invitations to prayer, and calls for inner transformation, shows that there is a continuity, a plan that extends beyond the boundaries of time. Medjugorje, in this sense, is not an isolated episode but part of a larger journey that leads humanity to reflect on its choices and decisions. And when we relate the 7 hidden messages to what has been announced on other occasions, we notice a common thread. They all seem to point to preparation, a preparation that involves vigilance, renouncing what separates us from God, and seeking a life more aligned with the hidden truth that sustains the universe. This preparation is not about fear, but about hope. It is a call to awaken, to abandon addictions, to restore families, and to remember that even in times of chaos, there is a promise of light that never fades. Many scholars argue that Medjugorje reinforces what was already present in Jesus' words, "Signs will accompany those who believe." And indeed, what we see there is exactly that, signs that accompany faith, signs that confirm the presence of something greater, signs that awaken a different mindset in all who have the courage to listen. It is not simply a repetition of ancient warnings, but an update of them, as if heaven, in each generation, finds new ways to get our attention. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when we recognize this connection between biblical and Marian prophecies, we understand that Medjugorje is not just a local story, but part of a global narrative spanning centuries. This hill has become a stage where past, present, and future meet, reminding us that we are not alone on our journey and that each revelation, even those that remain hidden, has an impact beyond our present comprehension. This connection is what gives weight, authority, and meaning to everything experienced there. And to reinforce this idea in our conversation, I want you to write a simple phrase in the comments that symbolizes this link between time and message. Comment, "Living Prophecies." Because that's exactly what Medjugorje represents, the testimony that prophecies are not stuck in the past, but live on, echoing and transforming hearts in the present. When we consider this connection between the signs of Medjugorje and biblical and Marian prophecies, it's impossible not to bring these reflections to bear on the reality we live in today. After all, what value would so many messages, visions, and signs have if they were merely confined to the past or reduced to distant stories? The truth is that the impact of these revelations only becomes meaningful when we find in them answers to the challenges of our time. And it is precisely here that practical lessons emerge, simple yet profound, that can transform the way we approach everyday life. The first call that echoes from Medjugorje to the present day is that of prayer. Not just prayer as the repetition of words, but as a true intimate encounter, capable of changing mindsets and quieting hearts. The modern world, so fast-paced and noisy, pushes us into a routine in which we can barely hear ourselves, let alone the voice of God. Therefore, prayer becomes a kind of refuge, but also a spiritual weapon, an instrument of lucidity amidst confusion. Many of those touched in Medjugorje say they learned to pray vividly, allowing each word to be a bridge between the human and the divine. This practice, if brought to our present, can be the key to restoring balance amidst so many pressures. Another essential point is fasting. In a world driven by consumption, immediacy, and the constant desire for satisfaction, fasting presents itself as a countercultural gesture. It teaches us to master our own desires and realize that we are not slaves to what we want. It is a practice that strengthens discipline, opens space for inner clarity, and, above all, helps us see what truly matters. In Medjugorje, fasting was presented not as punishment, but as liberation. An opportunity to train the heart to make more conscious choices, to make decisions that are not guided solely by impulses, but by a greater purpose. And we cannot forget conversion. This is perhaps the most frequently repeated word in all messages related to Marian apparitions, but also the most misunderstood. Conversion is not just changing religion or adopting new practices. It is transforming one's outlook, redefining priorities, and starting over from the inside out. In Medjugorje, many who lived far from their faith experienced this rediscovery. For us today, conversion can mean abandoning habits that destroy us, restoring broken relationships, rediscovering the simplicity and meaning lost amidst the hustle and bustle. It is a change of mindset, a daily choice to live differently. Vigilance also stands out as a timeless lesson. In these times where so many distractions compete for our attention, remaining vigilant is a challenge. But it is precisely this vigilance that keeps us alert to the signs, opportunities, and even dangers hidden in the small decisions of everyday life. Being vigilant doesn't mean living in fear, but living awake, with our eyes open to what truly matters. It means learning to see the extraordinary within the ordinary, recognizing the revelations hidden behind the scenes of everyday life. These 4 practices, prayer, fasting, conversion, and vigilance, are not just distant spiritual concepts but concrete tools for our times. They help us cope with emotional chaos, social pressures, economic uncertainty, and even the feeling of emptiness that so many carry. It's as if the messages of Medjugorje, even though they still hold secrets, already give us everything we need to navigate this journey. Because more important than knowing every detail of the revelations is learning to live a transformed life while we wait. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because if these simple practices have the power to prepare us, we also need to understand what they mean for the future, for the changes that will come and the revelations that still await their time. And this reflection paves the way for something even more challenging: how these messages can shape not only our personal lives, but the collective destiny of humanity. And before we continue along these lines, I want to propose a brief interaction. Comment on vigilance. This word carries within itself the spirit of everything we're reflecting on, because it's what keeps the heart attentive to the hidden truths yet to come. When we consider Medjugorje's practical lessons for our times, a question inevitably arises that resonates within everyone who follows this story. After all, what can we expect from the future? The mere existence of the 7 hidden messages already places us before a mystery that transcends time. They are not merely guarded secrets. They are like keys that have not yet been given, and whose opening can profoundly change the course of humanity. The great enigma lies in when and how these revelations will come to light, and above all in the impact they will have on each of us. Many believe that the messages will only be revealed at critical moments, when humanity is about to face decisive trials. Others believe that the revelation may happen gradually, like a series of warnings, until everyone is ready to fully understand what is being announced. This uncertainty is what keeps the spiritual tension surrounding the topic alive. On the one hand, there is hope that the messages will bring comfort and light. On the other, the fear that they may herald painful events capable of shaking political, social, and even spiritual structures. The future, in this context, is not something distant and abstract, but a reality that is already beginning to take shape in the present. Every person who decides to change their life, every family that rediscovers their faith, every community that strengthens itself in prayer is already, in some way, preparing the ground for the revelation of these messages. The secret, therefore, is not only about future events, but about how our current choices influence how we will be able to receive them. This forces us to reflect. Are we truly ready to hear the hidden truth that has not yet been revealed? It's impossible to talk about the future without talking about impact. Imagine what the world would be like if suddenly a clear message emerged, confirming what many already sense: that we are living in times of decision, where every action counts. The effect would be immense, causing everything from mass conversions to fierce resistance from those unwilling to accept change. The future of Medjugorje's messages is therefore also the future of humanity, because how we respond to them will define the course of our collective history. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when we look ahead, we can't limit ourselves to the expectation of great external revelations. What truly matters is realizing that the future is being shaped now, behind the scenes of life, in small gestures, in the silent choices each of us makes daily. Perhaps the great transformation we so long for is already underway, not in public squares or on the world stages, but within the hearts that have decided to open themselves to the call. This is the true impact. Revelation is not just something that will come, but something that is already happening in secret, within us. And to mark this point in our journey, I want you to write in the comments a word that accurately captures this mystery that accompanies us: revelation. Because that's what we're seeking, to understand not only the future that will come, but the hidden meaning already unfolding in the present, preparing us for what is yet to come. With each step of this journey, it becomes clear that Medjugorje is not just a dot on the map, but a place where heaven and earth mysteriously meet. The hill, once a setting for simple village life, remains to this day a space of encounter, faith, and transformation. The silence that hangs over it carries the memory of the voices that echoed and still echo for those willing to listen with an open heart. It's as if every stone, every path, and every tree is a living witness to a call that transcends time, reminding us that we are not alone and that there is always a greater meaning behind our struggles and hopes. What's striking is that, even with the passing of the years, this mystery hasn't lost its power. On the contrary, it seems to have deepened. Thousands of people continue to climb that hill, carrying with them pain, questions, and also hopes. And many come down with something different in their eyes, as if they've found an answer not written anywhere but revealed in the silence of the heart. This is the beauty of Medjugorje. It's not just about hearing voices, but about allowing those voices to resonate within us, opening space for new decisions, for changes in mindset, and for a transformation that can't be explained, only experienced. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because if these voices continue to echo, it means the message isn't limited to the past. It lives on, renewing itself with each generation, reaching those willing to walk this journey. And perhaps, the big question isn't just what has already been said, but what we are still willing to listen to. The call remains, and it's up to each of us to decide whether we will ignore it or let it lead us to a new way of living. Now I want to hear from you. What do you feel when you hear about the hidden messages of Medjugorje? Leave your comment below, like the video, so more people can discover this story, and subscribe to the channel to continue receiving content that reveals the greatest mysteries of faith. If you've made it this far, it's because something in this message spoke to you in a special way, and that's precisely why I want to invite you to continue walking with me. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future content, because each new video is designed to bring reflections that truly touch and make a difference. And to let me know you stuck it out until the end, leave this quote in the comments: "I'm with you until the end." This way, we create a network of people who are experiencing this journey of faith and mystery together. Oh, and don't forget to leave a like, because it helps strengthen this connection and shows that this type of content resonates with you. Now, if you want to follow along, there's a video right here that complements this topic. Click and stay with me there, because there's still much more to be revealed.